Have you ever felt that unsettling sting when thinking about what you could become if circumstances were wrong? It's a thought most people avoid. We don't want to look in the mirror and find something monstrous, something unknown. However, we all carry within us a door, an entryway that could open to the darkest abyss of our psyche. And what's terrifying isn't that the door exists, but how easily it could be crossed. Imagine yourself in your daily life, sitting at your workplace or in the comfort of your home, wrapped in routine. Everything seems normal, almost boring. Then, without warning, something changes. The structure that upholds the rules of what is right begins to crumble. What would you do if suddenly the social norms guiding your actions ceased to apply? Would you still be who you are now? An honorable, decent, virtuous person? Or perhaps that dark primal side, which we all try to ignore, would start to emerge. Today, I want to take you to an uncomfortable place, a space where the lights are dim and the shadows seem longer than usual. It's a journey into the fragility of our morality, to that part of us that hides behind good manners and polite words. Because although we like to believe that evil is something external, something reserved for others, the reality is far more disturbing. Evil doesn't just live outside of us. It resides within, waiting for its moment, lurking at the threshold. This is not a call to despair, but a warning. Each of us is closer than we think to crossing that boundary, to getting lost in the depths of what we fear to become. Today we will explore what leads us to that fall, how small decisions, seemingly innocent, can become chains dragging us to the bottom, and how the environment can shape us until we become something unrecognizable. Buckle up. This journey won't be easy. There are no perfect heroes or obvious villains here, just human beings facing their own darkness. And in the end, I'll ask you a troubling question, one you won't be able to avoid answering. If you were on that edge of the abyss, would you have the strength to step back, or would you end up falling? Before delving into today's topic, I want to share a story. It's not just a tale, it's a mirror that could reflect what we fear to face within ourselves. Listen carefully because the lessons it holds will accompany us for the rest of this journey. It was a dark and chilly night, one of those nights that seem to devour everything the light tries to touch. Carlos, a man in his 30s, was walking home after a long workday. The streets were deserted, and the silence was only broken by the echo of his steps on the wet asphalt. There was something strange in the air, a tension that made his breath feel heavier, though he couldn't explain it. When he turned a corner, he saw it. A man was lying on the ground, motionless, right under the flickering light of a street lamp. His first reaction was to stop. He observed the stranger from a distance, evaluating whether he should approach or simply walk away. Maybe he's drunk, he thought. But something didn't add up. The man wasn't moving at all, as if the cold had trapped him between life and death. Carlos swallowed hard and took a couple of steps forward, the doubt growing in his chest. As he got closer, he noticed the man's clothes were torn, as if he had fought with someone or something. His hands trembled, though he didn't know if it was from the cold or fear. Finally, he leaned down and carefully touched the man's shoulder. At that moment, the stranger abruptly lifted his head. His face was disfigured, not by wounds, but by an expression that wasn't human, a mix of rage, terror, and something else, something Carlos couldn't name. Before he could react, the man murmured something, barely audible, a whisper that the wind seemed to carry away. "Don't let it in. Don't let it in." Carlos stepped back, but there was no one else there. Only the darkness, the cold, and that man who kept repeating the same words over and over. Then deep in the street, where the light didn't reach, something moved. Was it a shadow? Or perhaps a figure? Something that shouldn't be there. Carlos had to decide, help the man and face the unknown, or turn around and go home, leaving that unsettling encounter behind. What would you do? Because on nights like this, decisions can define not only who you are, but what you can become. After hearing the story, it's impossible not to feel uneasy. That sensation of being on the edge of something unknown, of staring into the abyss without knowing what might stare back, forces us to reflect on our own nature. Because here's the truly disturbing part. We've all been in situations where our morality is tested, where what we choose can define how close we are to crossing that line into darkness. But what drives us to do wrong? Evil rarely appears suddenly. It's not a sudden explosion, but a constant drip, a subtle erosion of our values. It starts with seemingly insignificant decisions, ignoring what we know is wrong, justifying questionable behaviors with "it's not that bad," or simply looking the other way when we should act. Those moments that seem trivial are the bricks with which the bridge to the abyss is built. Philip Zimbardo, in his work The Lucifer Effect, describes it chillingly. Under the right conditions, any of us can become an agent of evil, not because we are inherently evil, but because the environment can shape us in ways we can't even imagine. This is where something crucial comes into play: the power of the environment as a catalyst for evil. Imagine finding yourself in a situation like the famous Milgram experiment. An authority figure orders you to do something you know is wrong, but assures you it's necessary and that you won't be responsible for the consequences. Would you have the strength to stop? Or would you be like the 65% of participants who administered increasing electric shocks, even when the victims screamed, begging them to stop? The environment has an almost invisible but overwhelming power. It pushes us, manipulates us, transforms us, and before we know it, we've done things we never imagined. An even more disturbing example is the Stanford Prison Experiment. College students, ordinary people, turned into abusers in just days. Why? Because they were given power. They were allowed to act without consequences. But evil doesn't only feed on the environment. There's another factor that makes it even more dangerous: language. Words, when used as weapons, have a hypnotic power. They can transform the unacceptable into something seemingly necessary. Torture becomes enhanced interrogation. Genocide is disguised as ethnic cleansing. And suddenly, what should horrify us seems reasonable. These narratives, if we don't question them, make us complicit, even without realizing it. And this isn't something that only happened in the past. Look around. The same dynamics are still present in our society, disguised with polished language and manipulative narratives. But evil doesn't always appear with an obvious face. Sometimes it hides behind a mask of normality, behind routine, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to emerge. The real question is, what would you do if you were in Carlos's place, facing the unknown, feeling the weight of the abyss watching you from the shadows? Would you be able to stand firm, or would you fall? Because in the end, it's not about whether you're near the abyss, but whether you have the strength to step back before it's too late. And so, we come to the end of this unsettling journey. We've explored the shadows of the human mind, that gray area where good and evil intertwine. We've faced the frightening truth that we all carry within us the potential for both light and darkness. The important thing is not to deny this duality, but to recognize it and be prepared to face it. Carlos's story and Zimbardo's research are not just isolated tales or psychological theories. They are mirrors in which we must look at ourselves. They teach us that evil doesn't always arise as something obvious, but as an accumulation of small decisions that over time can transform us into something we never imagined being. So the next time you find yourself in a situation that tests your morality, stop, reflect, and consciously decide who you